Hello and welcome to the Will to Thrive podcast, Stories of Resilience. I am Lisa Rumpel, your host, and today on the podcast, I have a special guest, Talia Kruse from Iowa. Welcome, Talia. It's
Thank
so
you for
great to
having
have a
me.
fellow blogger and mental health advocate on the show.
Yes, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I have three children. I stay at home and I live in Northeast Iowa. I live in a very rural area, but I grew up in Southeast Minnesota on a farm, so I'm used to the um, rural lifestyle a little bit. And I was diagnosed with bipolar when I was 24, and as a result of my psychological evaluation when I sought entrance into a religious community. And so that was about 10 years ago now. And although I ultimately discerned out after 2.5 years, it ended up being that those 2.5 years were the most healing, um, the most healing years of my life. They were very, very difficult, but they really allowed me to get a head start on dealing with the bipolar and being able to not have it be my complete master, and to be able to get on control so I could live a pretty normal life. And so on the other hand, it does make life a little tricky, and you have to there's a few certain things, I'm sure,
Mm-hmm.
um and so, and being a mom and a wife is hard enough. So with mental health on top of that, it can be a tricky thing. So I did start a blog a couple years ago. Um, Started out as Dear Dymphna, and then now it's just taliakruse.com. And I had to put it on the back burner for the past about a year and a half or so, because then I started school. As soon as I started this blog, um, kind of as an outreach to other women who are, trying to thrive in their motherhood and in their marriage, and it's a little harder than we thought. And then but also just a lot of the mental health um, things that play into that. I also started going to school at Divine Mercy University, and I'm
Wow,
about to finish that up.
that's
So, and
amazing.
they teach psychology through the Catholic Christian perspective. So they're very big on flourishing, how to help people really to flourish. So that's where I'm at.
Fantastic. And I think I found your blog a couple years ago
Mm-hmm.
because, and it was just such a great thing to find it because I was looking for other people who are Catholic and have mental illness, but are faithful and are trying to live out this Christian lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw your blog and it was just so inspiring because you're a mom too. And along with being a mom, you have bipolar disorder. And
Mm-hmm.
so as like with me, I have bipolar disorder type 2 as well. And, learning to manage that, has been years of healing and recovery and
Mm-hmm.
just, the hope to one day be a wife and mother. And,
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to my doctor just the other day and he said, back in the 70s and 80s, women with bipolar disorder were not healthy enough to
Mm-hmm.
marry and have kids. And
Yep.
but now there's all this new research because there are women who are flourishing with mental illness and
Mm-hmm.
having families. And it's just so hopeful and exciting because
Yeah.
for me, like, and I don't know if this was for you too, but like there was a point in time where I was like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can follow my dreams and my hopes
Mm-hmm.
because I have this illness, this chronic
Mm-hmm.
illness. But I
Yep.
I couldn't see past it. Like kind of like how you were saying, like you didn't want it to be your master. And for a
Mm-hmm.
while, I thought that this was all there was. But
Mm-hmm.
and there's these stories and these people are shining light into this. Like, no, you can have a full life with a mental
Mm-hmm.
illness.
And that's why I think I started the blog, because when you get the diagnosis, it's kind of a shock. Even
It
if you're like, okay, that kind of makes sense. It's
Yeah,
like the relief of having a diagnosis.
yeah,
But at the same time, I don't know, with bipolar, it's just so different. I got filled with all this negative info, that the divorce rate is 90%. And like, there's all these women who consider, well, maybe I just shouldn't even have kids. And there's a lot of that.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that doesn't really jive with the Catholic faith very well, or even just, myself. And so I guess I really wish I would have been able to, yeah, if there was just had been one person that said, you know what, I have bipolar 2 as well, and I still was able to get married, and I still had children, and everything turned out okay. And if it's amazing what just knowing that,
Yeah.
okay, I need proof that this can this can
Yes.
work.
Yeah. I
So,
think I know 3 women
mhm,
who have bipolar disorder and are moms. And that's
mhm,
the only amount, and you're one
mhm,
of them,
mhm,
and so I just hope to see more people really um, achieving their dreams and having a
mhm,
wonderful life with a partner and
mhm,
children,
mhm,
because it is manageable, and that's the what wonderful thing.
mhm.
You talk about flourishing like on your blog, and like for you, like what is the secret to flourishing? Is it something that we do, or
Well, and I was thinking about this question. I mean, flourishing, as much as it's a verb, so I guess it's an action, right?
yeah,
But as far as something that we do, I guess that I get kind of sensitive towards that idea, just because one of the hugest things in my therapy healing was really coming was really coming to terms with the fact that I'm not a human doing. And I'm a very
yeah,
choleric temperament. I really like to be productive. And not only did that, what being productive really looks like, I mean, is really different when you're a mom.
yeah,
Um, but the fact that God doesn't I mean, right, I mean, we're called to have actions, as long as our actions with our faith, right? But at the heart of it, at the real heart of it, that like the Lord totally delights with me being on the couch all day. Like if I,
yeah,
or
yeah,
those days that I really don't have days where I can't get out of bed anymore, unless it's just exhaustion. But
yeah.
the days where you're so depressed you can't get out of bed, few and far between now. Thanks be to God. But that he just delights in my existence, and other people do too. So just, and that's something with my coaching that, I continually, you have to know that you're a human being. And so what does that mean? And so, um and within that, really taking a look at the virtues, and really being able to put, how am I flourishing, in the frame of, well, how am I growing in virtue? Because what the world says is flourishing is going to be very different than um, what our faith really says is
So,
flourishing. Um,
yes,
and so within that construct, I mean, the virtues can help make the abstract a little bit more concrete.
yeah,
Um, so within that, I mean, a flourishing individual is always a virtuous individual, or always continuing to grow in virtue. So, and I find that in myself in so many ways. And so I would say, yeah, those were the two biggest things, is as flourishing is just really learning to how to be, and not put all my stock and all my worth in what I was doing and what I accomplished, but um just being, and which takes mental health habits to accomplish, as well as prayer and faith, um and then growing in virtue.
that's beautiful. Yeah, when I started writing for the BC Catholic newspaper here in
Mhm,
Vancouver about 3 years ago, and I remember like it was when I was first really coming out with my story of mental health and having a
mhm,
mental illness. And I remember the first day when I sent my first publication, or the column, and I thought,
mhm.
it doesn't matter. Like, Lord Jesus, you love me even if I didn't write this post.
Oh
Even if
yeah.
I didn't
Mhm,
write this, if I didn't do this, you'd still love me. And just knowing, like, yeah, that it's about our being, that God loves who we are, and not, I
mhm,
mean, he loves what we do too, but that we don't have to do anything to gain
mhm,
his love, which is what you're
mhm,
saying. And I think that's beautiful.
mhm. And I think what shocked me, that is that I came to know that through therapy more so than just like, oh, just I thought, well, if I just pray more and all those things, but really that awareness came through a lot of the cognitive behavioral therapy that I went through. So that's why I want people to know too that like it's so important to work on your mental health. I mean, even if you don't have an illness or not, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Everyone has mental health, whether they have illness or no illness, and we can all flourish or languish, it's kind of
Mhm.
like a pendulum, we got to
Right.
keep working on it. Like I find I have to do it daily, like,
Mhm.
because negative thoughts come in so quickly and
Mhm.
they can just start spiraling. And it's like, oh,
Mhm.
no, let's
Yep.
think about that. Like you've done a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. I use cognitive behavioral therapy too in my mental
Mhm.
health toolbox, my little toolkit. Um,
Mhm.
how have you changed your negative thought pattern, or what do you do when negative
Mhm.
thoughts start swarming and coming at you?
Well, I to be honest, I go back to my to the therapy that I went through and the cognitive behavioral therapy, right? That really focuses on being aware of your thoughts. How do you talk to yourself? And that um I find that some people have a better awareness of that than others. So I think first kind of being aware of that. Are you being negative? Because I think people, it can be so ingrained in their subconscious or unconscious that they don't even know that they're being so hard on themselves.
That's true.
And and when you're telling this to yourself multiple times a day, every day, I mean, it just has such an impact. So I guess for me, when I have negative thoughts, my my rule is usually to go, is this a distortion in some way? Is this distorted or is this true? And then, and so kind of being aware of that. But then if I'm really still struggling with it, the first thing I always do is get it out, somehow get it out on paper, go tell somebody else. Sometimes you just have to get it outside in order to be like, oh, that sounds really silly,
Mm.
or um, when I'm saying this out loud, it doesn't really make sense. And all of a sudden I kind of have my answer. But when I just keep it all inside, it's all, your mind can play lots of tricks and things. So that's probably my big thing is just being aware of it, then getting it out from here to outside my brain. Um, then I can kind of look at it and then I kind of you when you have therapy, you learn to work through and ask the right questions, like, well, what is that really true? And well, what would happen if that happened, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So and then you realize and just kind of uh, going through it logically, and then usually it comes back, it always comes down to like, okay, it's going to be okay. Or at when you're first going through therapy, you realize these deep-seated fears, that you have not come to terms with, or but now that I've worked through those, I can kind of see, oh, that's what's happening. So and then reminding yourself of the truth, right? Of just like, actually, that's not true.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I really think that a lot of mental health is honestly just coming to the absolute truth about yourself. And in the sight of God, it's a good truth. It's a really good truth. So,
That's beautiful. Yeah.
mhm,
The cognitive behavioral therapy that I've used is with this doctor, Dr. Abraham Lowe, has this Recovery International program, and he
mhm,
actually has like tools and spotting phrases. Like, so if you're having negative thoughts,
mhm,
he has things like expressions like replace an insecure thought with a secure thought, or
mhm,
things like it's distressing but not dangerous,
mhm,
or bear the discomfort in order to gain comfort. These all
mhm,
these like tons of tools, and I've really gone through that program and it's helped me
mhm,
so much. Because
mhm,
in a moment, so if say I'm in a stressful moment and I'm really concerned, I'm really worried, and I'm getting worked up, I can just stop and be like, okay, take a cooling off period, or
mhm,
stop, spot, and command the muscles, because we can command the muscles to move.
Mm-hmm.
Or like the three things I can control are my thoughts, my muscles, and my impulses.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else you can't, you have no control over your outer environment. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
our inner environment that we have control
Mm-hmm.
over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's been very helpful for me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
And
does
even
yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, you were talking about your environment, and it made me think of, as a mother, how much more true that is, because you can't just leave. You can't just be like, "Hey, you get out of here."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's very, it's very, I'm so glad you're able to recognize that, because I didn't necessarily recognize that until I was a mom. Like, ooh, I cannot just have control over my environment. So that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's true when you've got little ones.
Hmm.
Yeah. And what does it look like being a mom with bipolar disorder?
I mean, I think, um, well, now that I have a good handle on it, I mean, I don't think you would necessarily think it's any different
Yeah.
than any. I mean, I always kind of think, or I tend to explain it, um, like, I remember when there's some people who get really sensitive about the phrase, like, well, we're all a little bipolar, and especially when you're saying that to people, you're trying to explain the diagnosis, you're trying to explain what it is, and they're like, and they kind of slough you off, kind of like, well, we're all like that. Well, yes and no. But at the same time, going on the yes part, like, we're all very moody, and
Yeah.
especially when you're women and you have babies and you have hormones, and I mean, you have hormones even when you don't have babies,
Yeah.
obviously, but like,
Yeah.
it's different. It's a different hormonal game when you
Yeah.
are having babies and you're nursing and all that stuff. So you have to kind of take it all with a grain of salt there, as far as not feeling like yourself all the time and all that. Um, but I would say, it's pretty normal. I mean, the thing is that I'm not perfect, like, just like
Yeah.
any other
Yeah.
mom. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is knowing that I don't try to I am gonna mess up sometimes,
Of course. Yeah.
I am going to, and I have, as far as, so my I can get very angry. I have a very short temper. When especially when I'm very, I'm just irritable. I can be that irritable kind of, I mean, people would put it on the manic perspective maybe or something, but when you're talking about bipolar, but I can just, and so I can lose my patience in front of my kids, and probably more so than, like, what would be normal. And are those my proud moments? No. Are they every day? No. But every parent does have that. And I think that's also, the whole perfectionistic game too, of, like, people want to be the perfect mom, people want to be the perfect wife. They can never, that's not realistic. Like, it doesn't mean you don't try. It doesn't mean, I mean, you hopefully try not to do those things, but you don't lose all hope when you do. So kind of realizing that my kids are going to see me sometimes be a little off, and I mean, my kids are very little, so sometimes you just do what you would any other time. You apologize, you say, mommy's really grumpy, and she shouldn't have said that, she shouldn't have said that way, and you apologize, and then you move on. So I don't
Yeah.
think that necessarily my motherhood looks
Yeah. Different.
a whole lot different just because it's of the
Yeah.
bipolar.
Yeah. Often, it's like it shouldn't be like an exclusion just because you
Mhm.
have this type of illness or that type of illness.
Right.
We're all called, in some way. I mean, so if you're called to the vocation of marriage, we're
Hmm.
all called, to be open to life. And
Hmm.
so that's such a blessing, right? And
Yeah. But I mean, and it is at the same time, had I just jumped into marriage and motherhood without the amount of healing and therapy that I had beforehand, man, I would have had a reckoning. Like it would have been very tough.
True.
And that's, I mean, and it's not to say that, well, if you're already married and you already have kids and then you find out you're bipolar, there's still, I mean, there's still hope for you too. And it makes it difficult because your life does get busier, when all of a sudden, when you're single, there's a lot of advantages that you have to really working on yourself. Um, that aren't necessarily as easy to do when you're married. It doesn't mean it's not impossible, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's really good.
Hmm.
And what inspired you to be a mental health coach?
Oh man, I think um once I became a stay-at-home mom, and not that, I mean, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or not, but being a mom, we're all full-time mothers. So um I couldn't help but think of how grateful I was that I had gone through this already, that I had gone through this therapy. And it was just so clear to me that I would not be stable enough to be married and have kids, kind of how you were saying, like, well, in the 60s and 70s, that's how it was.
Yeah.
I can kind of see that, because I was on a path of being very, very unstable. And thankfully, getting it cut early enough, I was just so grateful. I was just so grateful that I was able to have that, and that I was able to then get married and have kids. And so it was just really hard for me to go throughout my day. And if I just couldn't help but think of how many women are suffering. Or, I used to really have an eating disorder. And like, I really thought, there's no escape from this. There's just, I don't know how to not think this way. And now I don't think that way. And so that immense amount of, I mean, you just kind of think it's just miraculous. You're just like, this is a
Yes.
miracle.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, and you just can't keep it, you just don't want to keep it to yourself. You just want to say to other people, it is so possible. It is so also very difficult, but it's just, and just instilling that hope, because I think that's what people need, so much encouragement. And we live, some people, it amazes me, people are surrounded by discouragement all the time. They grew up with discouraging families, they have discouraging coworkers, they have just discouragement, discouragement, discouragement. And that's one of the hugest things in flourishing and growing in the virtues, is having, that community that encourages you and that says, yes, the suffering is worth it. And that just helps you along, right? And you're striving for holiness in a wise way, and in a truthful and realistic way. And
Yeah.
so um I just couldn't help it. I just was like, I just need to help. I wish I could help somehow, and I remember sitting on my back, like sitting in our backyard and kind of watching the kids play. And I just remember being like really like drawn to, I really wanted to help, but I'm like, well, I don't know, like what, I don't want to be a therapist, and I don't want to be a counselor. Like I knew I didn't want to do that. And this, I mean, even just a couple years ago, like coaching wasn't, I feel like it's exploded now in a sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Um, but I was like, yeah, I remember coming across this term of like a coach, and I thought, well, I guess that's, yeah, kind of what I want to do. And then I came across this master's program through Divine Mercy University, and um, I just fell in love with it, and yeah, but I just couldn't hold it in. I couldn't have this all be to myself. I really wanted to share it. So
Beautiful. That's so beautiful. It's
yeah.
true what you're saying too, that yes, like it is possible to be made well. It's possible for healing, for health, for wellness. And it's
Mhm.
beautiful that you're companioning people like I like to along the journey for healing, because in my own journey, I've had many mentors, many people who've impacted me and made a difference in my healing journey. And it's just so
Mhm.
incredible.
Mhm.
And now you're doing that for other people because you've experienced so much love and so much help that now you're
Mhm.
sharing that out. And that's
Mhm.
so inspiring. And
Mhm.
I'm really glad that there's more people like you sharing hope to the world, because we all need it. We all need
Right.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're one of those people as well, Lisa. You're sharing your story, the podcast and the blog and everything, and so that's um it's so good, and especially when bipolar is just so tricky because it is unstable, and that's
Mhm.
the instability is what can drive you absolutely crazy. Um and so being able to go to those people that can kind of help center you, but do so in an encouraging way, so immensely important.
'Cause it does, your moods fluctuate. And so that, different times of the week or the
Mm-hmm.
month or whatever, and just situations can trigger or extra stress,
Mm-hmm.
So having those tools like cognitive behavioral therapy and
Mm-hmm.
remembering that God loves me as a daughter. And
Mm-hmm.
then just, sometimes it's just taking time to read a book or have a hot shower and go to bed super early.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just about getting enough sleep, and that really helps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
It's been such a joy to have you on the podcast,
Well,
Talia. So
thank you
where
very
can
much.
people find you if they want
So people
to?
I
Yeah,
still have my blog up, taliakruse.com. And you can go there anytime and you can find all my contact info there.
that's Talia Kruse with KRUSE.com. That's awesome. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your family life right now to join me on the podcast, and keep doing
Oh,
the great work. And I can't wait to hear what, you're graduating from the Divine Mercy University, and
mhm.
that's really exciting.
Well, thank you
So
so much for having me, Lisa.
yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. God bless.
All right. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.